Hi, everyone. Welcome to United Way's panel on returning citizens and expungement. My name is Mary Ann Floto, and I work in community impact. Today, your United Way is going to focus on a segment of the population that often gets overlooked during these difficult times, the returning citizen. Every year, 20,000 formerly incarcerated individuals return to the Washington, D.C. area. In addition to dealing with COVID-19, they must overcome obstacles such as finding a job, a place to live, and family reunification. Today, we are fortunate to have a panel of experts who have experience helping returning citizens overcome these barriers. Our first speaker is Amanda Torres, who is a staff attorney and program manager for Rising for Justice, which assists returning citizens in expunging their criminal records. Amanda has represented hundreds of indigent clients, both juveniles and adults, and conducted nearly 40 trials. She has dedicated her career to advocating on behalf of marginalized persons.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Again, my name is Amanda Torres, and I run the expungement program at Rising for Justice. And I'll go ahead and start out with kind of the tough news while we get started in talking about what exactly expungement and record sealing is. And that's that a lot of people simply aren't eligible because the expungement and record sealing laws are very restrictive. But I always tell people that are interested that it's worth getting more information and reaching out to people like myself who are able to guide you and determine whether you are eligible or not for expungement. You can go ahead and go to the next there. Perfect. So the first thing that I need to make sure we discuss is the difference between expungement and record sealing. I'm going to talk about the two terms a lot. This slide is perfect. So expungement is the actual removal of information about a crime or arrest from court and law enforcement agency records. Next slide. And record sealing is blocking the public from viewing those records. So expungement is removing, record sealing is blocking. We can all agree that removing is the best thing that we can get, but more often than not, what we're really talking about when we're talking about expungement and record sealing work is blocking the public from seeing the records. And don't get discouraged, that's still very good and very useful in opening up opportunities if you do have a criminal record. Next slide. The answer to this question is that no, you cannot choose between expungement and record sealing. The law chooses for us. So it depends on the kind of record that you have, whether it's an arrest or a conviction, and then the level, so misdemeanor versus felony, and a few other criteria that we'll talk about in a moment. But even though we would all love to choose expungement, it's just not possible. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So most people think we're really just talking about convictions, but that's not the case. We're talking about arrests, convictions, and even bench warrants can be expunged or sealed from your record. So that's, very promising for people who have arrests that, bog them down from opportunities. And the majority of people in America and in DC who are arrested don't actually have a case that ends in conviction. So it becomes even more important that we try whenever available to get these arrest records sealed. Go ahead and next slide. So the question I always get about record sealing is like, okay, well, if it's blocked, is it blocked from everyone? Unfortunately, no, but what I will say is that it's very limited who can access those records once they're sealed. The courts can still see them, law enforcement, prosecutors, and then this next category is really, we think about the jobs that you're applying for. And so it's kind of a conversation that we have to see whether it's going to get you where you want to go. So if you're trying to, for example, get certain occupational licenses or work in education, and there are certain ways that it will and will not affect you. But if the job that you're looking for is within those categories or government, then your record might not actually be sealed. It could still be helpful to you in other ways, but it is something to keep in mind. Next slide. All right, so If you only have an arrest record, you are in the best position possible, because what that means is what we then focus on is going to be how many years has it been since the arrest. There's a waiting period that we're typically looking at. If it's a simple misdemeanor arrest, it could be quite low, just 2 years from the arrest that you have to wait, and then you're eligible for sealing. And that's under what we call the interest of justice law, which I'll talk a little bit about more in a second. If you have an arrest for a felony, the waiting period can go up to 4 to 8 years. Just kind of depends on the kind of charge that we're talking about. And if you have just an arrest, but we can show that you were innocent of the charge that you were arrested for, we can actually move forward on an actual innocence motion. And it's not like the Innocence Project that we think of in the media. This is more using affidavits, so sworn statements, or any other kind of evidence that we can find. That one doesn't have a waiting period, but it's understandably a little bit more complicated, more time consuming than other types of motions. Go to the next slide. If you've actually been convicted of a misdemeanor, it's not the best place to be, but it's still better than if you're unfortunately convicted of a felony. So what we're looking at there again is the waiting period, right? And so the waiting period is extended when we're talking about a conviction instead of an arrest. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And then last but not least, I would say about 95% of the time, if you've been convicted of a felony, you will not be eligible for expungement or record sealing. There are some small exceptions, and I'll quickly go over those. So number one is if you were arrested for a failure to appear. So if you have a felony case, you get arrested because you failed to appear, it now is seen as a new felony charge. And so that is a felony that we can do a motion on. If you have, and this is something that happens very, very often, let's say, for example, that you have an arrest and a warrant out for your arrest in Maryland, and you're arrested for that here in DC, you would have a new felony case, and it would show that you were a fugitive. And so it sounds bad when you're looking at a record, and that's a type of felony that we can get a motion to seal done on. And then last but not least, and really the most powerful of all of the laws regarding felonies, is the Youth Rehabilitation Act. So if you were 24 years of age or younger at the time, then you would potentially be able to get not only your record sealed, but a set aside, which is fantastic and very impactful on your record. And so when someone comes to me and says, I have a felony conviction, I'm not eligible, am I? My first question is always, how old were you? And so those are the three exceptions to the rule. Next slide. And just briefly going over the types of cases, already mentioned actual innocence. Interest of justice is kind of our bread and butter. Those are the most common motions that we do. And really what we're looking at there is, what is the interest that the client, so the interest in you having opportunities if this record is sealed? What's the interest of the community if your record is sealed? And then what's the interest of the community to still have access to your record? Fugitive cases, already talked about that. And then the biggest one, and the one that I'm seeing a surge in, which makes me very happy that we're able to actually use the law in our favor, is when a charge has been decriminalized or legalized. And we're seeing a lot of movement there when it comes to marijuana charges. And the most amazing thing is that if you only have the marijuana charge, so there's not an attached distribution or sale or anything like that, then you're entitled to relief, meaning that the expectation is that you are going to win on your motion. You can go to the next slide. There are some other ways that we can get your record expunged or sealed. Number one, if you were a first-time drug offender. Number two, underage consumption, possession, or alcohol. And that's, you do like a brief, it's almost like a mini probation. It's very brief. You do some community service hours and pay a small fine, and then you'll be eligible. That only takes 6 months, and you're not dealing with those like lengthy year-long waiting periods. Next one is if you're a human trafficking victim. That's not something that we see as often, but we're always interested in doing that work if we're able to. And then I already mentioned the Youth Rehabilitation Act. Next slide. So in DC, unfortunately, expungement is basically impossible without an attorney. And having an attorney is obviously very expensive. There's so many fees that go along with it. Go to the next slide. So at Rising for Justice, we do community outreach like this. We speak to as many people as we possibly can. We take calls, we do intake interviews, we screen, we gather your records, and then we determine whether you are eligible for a motion to seal, set aside, expunge. And then we also train attorneys at many of the local law firms and other organizations, and then we place cases with them and we mentor them along the way. So if they ever have any questions, they're able to get with us. Next slide. To qualify for services from us, you have to be a DC resident, you have to qualify as low income and have a criminal record in DC. So if you don't qualify, if you're not a DC resident, but you're a Maryland resident, what we've also done is we've compiled a list of resources throughout the entire United States, because we get so many clients who have lived in many different places and either currently live somewhere else in the DMV area, or they have records not only in DC but also in other states. So what we do is we can still work on their DC records if they're a DC resident, and then refer them over to somewhere in another state to work on sealing those records. So I always tell people, please call us, because we'll, if not help you, then we'll set you in the right direction. Next slide. So I want to briefly talk about how expungement can help, because sometimes even when someone is eligible, they think, well, what's the point to start on this process? Next slide. I could do a whole other presentation just specifically on all of the ways that expungement and record sealing can be helpful to someone. But I think that the most important and the feedback that I get from clients most often is with education and employment. And I think the bottom line here is financial stability can open doors like nothing else can. And it has this trickle down effect of when you have the ability to meet the needs of shelter and food and just safety overall, then you're better able to assist your family, your friends, you're a better employee, you're a better member of your family, and you can succeed and open up other doors in your life. Go to the next slide. So specifically, this can include things like having more money for rent and repairs, because you are able to, apply to that promotion or, get a job that you never even thought that you would apply for in the first place. And things like affording better medical care for yourself, for your family, for your children, that can be directly impacted by, your record not being a hindrance to you. Next slide. We also hear from clients that whether they were either not allowed to do things in their family life, or they were just ashamed or embarrassed that they stopped themselves from doing things in their family life, that having their record sealed or expunged gave them the opportunity or the confidence to be more involved. And little things that we probably don't think of every day, but that can have a huge impact on a person is, the ability to chaperone a school field trip for your child and to have that connection with your child can be huge. Next slide. So the work that I specifically do in the expungement program is talking about your criminal record, right? And sealing your criminal record. And that's not work that's done in a bubble, because at Rising for Justice, we also have a tenant justice program where we represent tenants, and we also give advice and guidance the way that I do regarding criminal records. So I think it's important that I also include the fact that you have certain rights when it comes to sealing both your past eviction cases and which I'll discuss in a second, you have some rights regarding your criminal record as it applies to housing. So I know this is a lot of information, but it's valuable information to know that you have the right to ask the court to seal your past evictions so that your future landlords won't be able to see them. And just like I can help you seal, do a motion to seal your criminal records, you can also do a motion to seal your eviction records. And if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to us at Rising for Justice. It would be another program at my organization, but I would send you on the right direction. And if you don't know what's currently on your record, which is very normal, and that goes for not just criminal records, but also eviction records, you can go to the court website, and that'll also be available in a fact sheet that I've created so that you can find out that information. Next slide. And regarding your criminal record and housing, so there are limited circumstances where your criminal record can be available, but the landlord has to make it clear what information they're going to be considering, and they can only withdraw an offer that they've previously made to you if it's based on a substantial, legitimate, non-discriminatory interest. I say that, and I also say that if you at all believe that you've been discriminated against, that you should contact the Office of Human Rights, and you can certainly reach out to us to help guide you. Next slide. So what you can do now is do a background check on yourself, and both for the evictions and for your criminal record. You can actually do a background check through the FBI, and I can also help you if you only have DC records. That's pretty simple for me to see. If you already have records, you can gather them yourself. Some people hold on to that sort of thing. Some people don't. That's okay. And then last but not least, you can reach out to us. And like I said previously, and I'll always say, if I can't help you, I'm going to find someone who can either help you or get you a little closer to the help that you need. Next slide. Actually, I think that's it. Yeah, that's my contact information. You're able to contact me with any questions about expungement, record sealing, and also how that is related to housing.
Thank you, Amanda. That was great. And following your PowerPoint was a quick fact sheet, which we'll make sure that the people have a chance to look at. Our next speaker is Lamont Carey, Director of the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs, or MORCA. MORCA was established in 2007 specifically to serve formerly incarcerated individuals, the first of its kind in the nation. Lamont has been with MORCA since 2019. He's going to share information about how MORCA helps returning citizens connect to services in the community. And he also may share with you a little bit about his background, which is quite interesting. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. On behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share in the work that she is doing in the district. So again, my name is Lamont Carey. I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs, and we are considered the hub for reentry. And that is because we serve over 1,500 to 2,000 individuals every year. So I'll tell a little bit about the makeup of our office and how you, or the people that you know that are returning citizens, can connect with us and we can help in their successful transition. So my ultimate role as a director is to advise the mayor on barriers that exist for returning citizens in the effort to have those barriers to be removed. Because her motto is that we're all in this together, and my charge is to put returning citizens on a pathway to the middle class. And the only way that I could do that is by the help of my amazing team, the administration, and you all, the community at large. So MORCA is made up of 4 different departments now. So typically when an individual comes into MORCA, they do the intake, and then they'll meet with a case manager who will do an assessment to determine what their needs are and what their wants are, and they will accomplish this together. So it's extremely important for individuals to be open and honest about what their needs are. And that's why I have exceptionally well case managers that are able to make those that are uncomfortable, comfortable enough to communicate with them. And part of that reason that we've been successful in making them comfortable is because the majority of my staff are returning citizens. That's right. The majority of my staff are convicted felons who are doing an amazing job in helping people renew, repair, and live a spectacular life. So again, my case managers conduct the assessments, then they create individual case plans and provide the constituents with referrals that's going to help them meet those needs. And so potentially some of the referrals that they will receive will be organizations that will be speaking today, Catholic Charities and Rising for Justice. And so if an individual has a need, and some of the biggest needs are housing and employment. But there's a third need that is not always mentioned, and that is the internal barriers that our loved ones are dealing with in order to help them overcome barriers. Some have never had a job before. Some still see their conviction blurring before their eyes and don't think they will be accepted. And so with the case managers, they help uncover what those needs are. And so if they're in need of education, because a lot of our individuals get released without the GED, if they need job training skills, or if they're looking for employment, then they can be referred over to our another department, which is our workforce development team. And our workforce development team is made up of 3 individuals currently: our workforce development program manager and 2 workforce specialists. So one of the workforce specialists focus strictly on education and job training. Because for an individual to move on, like Ms. Torres says, and for an individual to move on to live a productive life, gotta have the minimum of the GED. They're trying to get into college, we connect them to UDC or other colleges that we can help get them connected to, and job training. So typically or traditionally, returning citizens have been going into retail and construction, but not all returning citizens want to work in that field. So we are constantly looking for new opportunities and new lanes. And the mayor has made DC government one of those new lanes. So I have a staff full of returning citizens who are case managers, workforce development, outreach, and more. And so if the individual is looking for employment, they'll see the other specialist who is constantly building relationships with employers so that we can refer them to employers that have job openings. And some employers contact us and tell us what they're looking for. So once they've seen case management, once they've seen workforce, we want to make sure that they're following up with the referrals. So we just added the returning citizens peer navigators. And the navigator's responsibility is to be like a support system to the returning citizens that are receiving the referrals. So part of their makeup of the job is being a coach, being a motivator, and sometimes being a mentor to help them to make it to the referral, connect with the referral, enrolled in the program or enrolled in, take the job, and then we work with them until they complete it. Now, if it's employment, we're not going to be there the whole time that they're employed. They might be there 30 years. But when they go into a job training program, say the job training program lasts 6 weeks, the navigator will be checking in with them to see how things are going, see how they're feeling, and if we can be of assistance in helping them overcome some internal barriers or some external barriers, they'll help to work with them on that. So that is what the peer navigator does. They increase the chances of our constituents completing the referrals, because the referrals, the assessments are based off of what it will take for an individual to successfully transition. And so if they are not fulfilling the referrals, they're not doing everything that they're going to need to do to successfully transition. And so we wanted to fill that gap and increase those completion rates. So next department we have is outreach. Outreach team focuses on a plethora of things, but some of the things that they work at. You may go to a community event and you'll see a table there with somebody passing out literature or engaging the community. That is what that is what our outreach team does, right? That's part of their work, because when returning citizens don't know about us or don't come to us, we try to figure out how we can go to them and engage them. And sometimes engaging them directly may be a struggle, so we engage their families and their community. Long as they know that we support returning citizens, they'll know where to direct the returning citizens. Another thing that our outreach team does, prison visits, right? So in DC, we don't have our own prison now, and our residents are housed in the Federal Bureau of Prison. So before the pandemic, we were taking two kinds of trips every month, family reunification trips, where we take family members into the prisons to visit their loved ones. And then the other trip was outreach engagement trips, where we would bring partners like Catholic Charities, like Rising for Justice, along on the bus ride to engage DC prisoners directly. And we also go to the local jail and to the nearest states like Maryland, and now we're about to start going into Virginia to connect with DC residents that are housed there. So also another thing that our outreach team does, they build relationships with national organizations that are doing business in DC. Sometimes maybe not, because we're looking at what is working in other states and how can we share it with our partners in DC. And this is something that we can make happen in the administration to make the successful transition even greater. So those are the different departments that MORCA has. But just know that our number one priority, 5 days a week and sometimes 7 days a week, is how do we connect to returning citizens that are DC residents to help them to create a pathway to the middle class, because as the mayor promised, we are all in this together. And so by all of us being this together, we have to look out for each other and not leave anyone behind, but help them, give a helping hand and welcome them into the many opportunities that exist in the district. And before I close, this is how progressive that the district is, and it helps us in our work. We currently have a DC prisoner can vote in prison. We just had one in an election that is now the ANC commission that has been in prison for 26 years. He's a politician. And immediately when individuals are released, they can vote. We also have the ban the box on occupational licenses, right? We also have ban the box on housing, and everything that Torres said with Rising for Justice, that they can, and sometimes they do look at the background and deny, but the whole goal is to give the person the opportunity to sell themselves, to say how they could be an asset to a company, how they could be a good neighbor living in their complexes, and how they not only have the credentials, but they can do and start businesses every day in the district. Most of the people that are saving lives in the district, organization-wise, are run from and by returning citizens. So DC is very progressive in how we help returning citizens successfully transition. So if you are a returning citizen, no one that is a DC resident or living in DC, have them reach out to us. We are the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs. Look us up and you can find us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lamont. That was so interesting. Now, our next speaker is Karen McNeal, the Senior Program Director at Catholic Charities, Archdiocese of Washington. Karen has years of experience helping people who are disadvantaged and marginalized. She developed Catholic Charities Prison Outreach and Welcome Home Reentry Program.
Hey, thank you, Marianne. Thank you for inviting me on the panel today. My name again is Karen McNeal, and I am the Senior Program Manager for the Welcome Home Reentry Program at Catholic Charities. Next slide. Well, I want to give you a little bit of the history of the Welcome Home Reentry Program. It started in 1984. Father Michael Bryant, who was the founder of the Welcome Home Reentry Program, he was the chaplain at DC jail for over 30 years. Him, along with Sister Susan Van Balen, they realized how people coming home from prison, getting released late at night, they didn't have anybody to pick them up. And it was just crazy that they were being released to the community. And then those who didn't have, they left sometimes without anything. So at the minimum that they could do would be to provide toiletries and other necessities. In 2006, after they witnessed the high rate of recidivism, they began to think about how could they broaden their focus. And at that point, they launched the Welcome Home Reentry Program in February of 2006. And this program actually began at the Montgomery County Pre-Release Center in Montgomery County in Rockville, Maryland. In 2013, I came aboard. Again, they merged they saw that the need was so great, and their operation was very small at that time. They merged with Catholic Charities. And again, that's when I came on board, and that was to expand the reach of the program and to continue to be able to support clients, but in a much deeper way. Now we're working with men and women transitioning back into the community and still in Montgomery County, in the District of Columbia, Prince George's County, and also we were providing services to those who were in the Montgomery County, the Charles County Detention Center, who had moderate to severe mental illness and returning to the community from incarceration. In 2020, we launched the Reentry Case Management Program. One of our partners, which is the Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants, we were awarded a grant to be able to provide case management alongside of everything else that we do in our programs. In 2021, which just recently happened, we were actually blessed with the opportunity to be able to provide permanent supportive housing to those coming home from incarceration as well. Next slide. So what do? We connect returning citizens with volunteers to form a mentoring relationship. That is the crux of our program. The Welcome Home Reentry Program has always been a mentoring program. That was first because we understand how important it is when people come home from jail and or prisons, and they've been gone a long time. So, and they may not know how to navigate, they won't know in most cases how to navigate the barriers that they'll face when they come home. So our volunteers help them to navigate all of that, and they work very closely with us to be able to provide and answer any questions and just guide them through. Excuse me. Those services also include housing and case management. We assist in connecting returning citizens to organizations like MORCA. We've dealt with MORCA for years, and a lot of the community-based organizations around the city, and all of the organizations that we believe would be able to help meet their needs. A lot of times folks come home, they've been locked up for many years, and they don't have the relationships. Either they have burned bridges or they've lost family members, but they don't have the relationships that to help them be successful in the community. So we try to help them with that by exposing them to different activities and ideas that they would never possibly have participated in before. We also help them to develop stronger spiritual connections. We do not proselytize. However, we try to meet them where they are, and then just to meet the spirit man, to get them to understand that, or to find out how, get in touch with where their brokenness, where that came from, and how they could change all of that if they would look to something outside of themselves. And with all of this, participating in our program, we have seen that it reduces recidivism when they participate in programs like ours and the other partners that we have. Next slide. And again, our partners are Morgan. Lamont has been a good friend, and the organization has been a good friend to Catholic Charities in the Welcome Home program. The DC Department of Corrections, which is DC Jail. C. Sosa, we work with many of their clients who are coming home from prison who need mentors. The Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants. The Ready Center is new, that's through the mayor's office, has been a great partner to us. And Jubilee Housing, who we worked with transitional housing for many years as well. And our partners stand with us in our mission to provide services to those returning to the community from incarceration. And we understand the difference we can make if we work together. So I'm so encouraged by the commitment of the staff who work in these organizations, and just a pleasure to work with them. Next slide. So the services we provide, case management, our case managers, initially when the mentoring program, those mentors, they're there, but they are not, they walk with the clients, but they're not case managers. So we were blessed to be able to get the funding to start to provide case management services. And that's very comprehensive for everybody who comes through our door. We've also incorporated a new Pentor program. We turned to be able to meet the needs of folks in this, when COVID hit in the pandemic, we came up with a Pentor program where we could still reach people who were incarcerated in local jails and in the federal prison system by a pen pal, by matching them with pen pals. So we call that the Pentor program. Our mentoring program, of course, is where we provide mentors who walk with them for at least a year. And the Pentor program is the same. They will continue that relationship with writing for up to a year, or when they get ready to be released, and then they'll come into our mentor program. And at that time, they have an opportunity to stay with the mentor that they had, or to be rematched with another mentor. And that would last, that relationship would last up to a year. We help with documentation assistance, with government IDs, birth certificates, social security cards, even though it's been hard for people to get. And that's one of the main things. People have not been able to get their government IDs and birth certificates, and the documents that they need to be able to get jobs. But we've had, and that's where our partners come in. It's so critical and crucial to have these relationships with different organizations who may be able to help us to get this done for our clients. Referrals for mental health and physical health assessments. We have a core services agency, which is Anchor Mental Health, that's run by Catholic Charities. A lot of times, folks are coming home that have been locked up, and in my program have been locked up for 25. We have one person who's been locked up for 44 years. And while they did well when they were in prison, when they come home in the community, it's a little different for them, and not being able, like some of them left and they didn't have the telephones where the cell phones where we're taking pictures and using it as a computer. They were not familiar with any of that, and not even knowing how to catch the train. So it seems, from what I observed, they became more uncomfortable with just being able to deal with life on life's terms. So we make sure that we get the assessments that they need, and the therapy and whatever else they need to be able to exist in the community. The substance abuse referrals, we make sure that we take care of that. We have the Return to Citizen Support Group. We asked them to participate in any other support groups that are going on in the city, especially because most of them are virtual at this point. It's because COVID is starting to relax in the city a little in DC. They could get out to some of them, but not all. Some people are still a little reluctant, but we do make sure that they are participating in support groups with guys and women who have the same, who have been incarcerated as well. We provide grief support. We have one guy who, in particular, who was gone, this one who was gone for 40 years. His whole family just about, but particularly his mother and father passed. They were older when he left. So of course, being gone for 40 years, they were not here when he returned. So that was really, he had to do the best that he could while he was in prison. But when he came home, it really hit that he didn't have his parents, and a lot of his uncles and aunts were not around. We follow up, retention follow up. We make sure that people who are working and who are participating in our programs, our case managers check in on them, of course, with their permission, that we are able to call. We go through their jobs, and also we have retention support groups as well. We create individualized reentry plans with everybody who comes through our program. And it's client-centered to make sure that we are helping them to achieve the goals that they set for themselves. The family involvement and reunification support, again, people have been gone for years. So and their children are probably grown. When they left, their kids were young, but now they're 25 and 26. And to be able to bridge that gap, we work with them and the family to bring them back together. Our mentors are faith-based, so they don't have to be, but we reach out to everybody. It doesn't matter what faith and where you come from, but we do want people who have a spirit of wanting to help. We provide life skills, group mentoring, education referrals and GED testing fees. We pay for those. We work with folks around the city who are able to provide jobs and training. And also, again, we just started to provide permanent supportive, and now we will be providing transitional housing. Next slide. Volunteer support and funding. Okay, our volunteers, we would not make it if we didn't have our volunteers. They help us to deliver vital programs and services. And they help the return to citizens navigate the barriers. I can't tell you how important the volunteers are. Our guys and the women, they have the greatest relationships. We match the mentors, the mentees, with people who have the same. Sometimes they have the same. I'm sorry, it's skipping my head. They have the same interest. They have the same interest, and they help in the networking that they do. It causes them to they see that they get jobs. They are able to help them with their GEDs, or if they want to go back, return to college and different things like that. So the volunteers, well, I can't say enough what they do for us and how important they are to our programs. Excuse me. They make open and affirmative friendships that support return to citizens. They receive specialized training from us, coaching and support from the Welcome Home team. And also, they always show that they care, because people coming home from prison, they can tell very quickly if you have their best interests at heart. And we're so blessed to be able to have identified volunteers who care about the people that we serve. So, and we depend on the support of government and local grants, foundations, as well as our faithful individual donors. And their support offers a real second chance for so many who can really thrive in a community if given the opportunity. So if you have any questions, next slide. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. And my number is here, 202-772-4300, extension 040. You will also be able to speak with any one of the program coordinators. Their numbers are on my line as well. So again, thank you. And we hope that we will be hearing from you. If you know a returning citizen who needs our help, please send this our way. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you. I really would like to thank the speakers for sharing information about the programs and resources available for returning citizens. This is really enlightening. We still have a little time left for a few questions that came in advance of today's discussion. So I have a question for Amanda. And I'm not sure you covered this, but how long is the process to have a returning citizen's record sealed? And can a returning citizen get his record sealed if he is on probation?
So the process depends on the type of motion that we're doing. The quickest motions are those decriminalization, legalization, because there is a presumption that the client is going to be successful on the motion under the law. So that should only take a couple of months. Cases like actual innocence or interest of justice, because those really require a good amount of investigation. For example, with interest of justice, we might be requesting our clients, family and friends to be writing letters of support. We might be requesting certifications, degrees, anything that would support our argument that our client deserves. It would be in the interest of justice for our client to, have this benefit in their life. Those take a little bit longer. So I tell my clients to expect at the very least 6 months, but it can be longer. And I will also add, for the actual innocence cases, those are the only ones that we typically see ever make it to court. Usually these cases are handled on the pleadings, which is just fancy lawyer talk for on paper. We're just filing paperwork. The actual innocence do sometimes end in hearings. Regarding whether a person on probation, parole, or any other kind of supervision is eligible, most of the time, no. For the most part, that waiting period that I talked about that can fluctuate based on the type of charge and whether it was an arrest or conviction, that waiting period is typically calculated from the end of any supervision related to the case. So we talk about the end of the sentence. So if your sentence was jail followed by probation or prison followed by probation, the clock doesn't start until you end probation. It's always easier for me to get your end date information from you rather than CSOSA. So if you're able to, please record that information. If it's even just a note in your phone or on a piece of paper you have reference to, and then that way, even if you're not eligible today, I can still do the work to determine when you will be eligible and let you know to come back to me at that time.
Thank you. The next question is from Lamont. Lamont, what do you think is the most important thing that a returning citizen can do to successfully integrate into his or her local community, based on all the people that you worked with?
So for the best thing that they can do, I would say, one is to contact MORCA or another agency that supports them in their reentry. Because some of the things that they're going to need that is the immediate barrier is the ID. A lot of times the birth certificate and the social security card, and you need those. You need the birth certificate and the social security card to even get an ID. And there are a lot of buildings in the district alone that you need an ID to enter, even the residential areas. And so I would say to connect with us so we could do the full assessment to determine what the needs are. And that creates the foundation on what it's going to take for them to be successful. But again, there are those internal needs as well. So at MORCA, we connect them to Not only do we help them get the birth certificate, social security card, and the ID, the driver's license, if they have ticket issues, we also support them in that. If they have housing issues, we provide a few vouchers, but if we don't have any vouchers available, which there's always a long waiting list, we will refer them to a partner like Catholic Charities that has temporary housing. And so I would say one of the first steps would be to connect to us so that we can identify what the needs are, what the barriers are, and then we can connect them to our partners that also assist us in removing those efforts. So whatever the need is, right? So say if they want entrepreneurship, we have a partnership with small local disadvantaged businesses that has a program called Aspire. They need soft skills and job training and placement. We have a relationship with Department of Employment Services that does the soft skills and then put them in, pair them with the employer that they work for 6 months. A lot of times the employers keep them on, and sometimes they move forward. So we have these different relationships that MORCA is attached to that we can use our relationships to create a pathway for them. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it does. Thank you very much. And the next question is for Karen. Karen, thank you so much for sharing information about Welcome Home. How does one register for Welcome Home, number one? And then does Welcome Home get involved with housing? I think you alluded to it, because I know that's one of the number one issues with pretty much everybody in the city who's low income, but especially returning citizens who may not have relationships with their families.
Well, there are different types of ways to get connected to our program. One, family members. We've had several family members to call us, to call the coordinators for the jurisdiction which they'll be returning back to. Our coordinators reach out to the federal prison systems. And before COVID, we were visiting the federal prisons with even MORCA was taking people to different prisons, and our coordinators would ride alongside them going to the federal prison systems, and we would do information sessions to get people in, to get them the information that they would need when it's time for them to get ready to come home. So they end about word of mouth. People pass the word just based on the services and the success that we have in the community. But just by calling, if they write to us, they can write. Just write to Catholic Charities if they don't know the name or don't remember the name, but it's the Welcome Home Reentry Program that will come directly to us at our G Street address. But have a family member call, have a case manager call, any kind of way that they could get in touch with us, we'll respond back. We respond back to all letters as well. Great. Oh, you did ask about the housing. I'm sorry.
Right. Oh, that's great.
We have just got a grant for permanent supportive housing. That is done through the SPDAT, which is the Specialized Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool. And this program is specifically for people who are chronically homeless. Which is a lot of our folks in the District of Columbia. We have 18 beds at this time, and this is the first time that something like this program is being done in the city. So with our model and our example, we follow a housing first model. With our example, and we're being evaluated, this will show the council, the mayor's office, how much this is needed. How much the services and when folks coming home from being locked up so long and they have mental health issues and other things going on, we don't put people out just because they use drugs. But what we do is work with them to get them to deal with or address the reasons why they use drugs. So it is not like other programs that if you use drugs, you get your terminated immediately. That doesn't happen in our program. We're there to help them, to guide them to a path to success, and hopefully and prayerfully that we can address whatever that is that causes them to use drugs. So those referrals come through the Link U system. That's it's something that's in DC, where all the community-based organizations are able to I should have put that on my website as well, but I can also give you that information, Marianne, if anybody asks for it, how to make referrals to our Link You program. But that program is permanent supportive housing. And right now, at this time, we are full. However, because the program is going so well, we're looking at, we need more grant money. We need more money to be able to open up and obtain other bed space and other housing for our clients who are coming home who are returning back to the community. The transitional housing is new to us as well. We just acquired a few beds through Jubilee Housing. We haven't really talked about that yet, but I guess now everybody knows, but we're developing that program as well. And Jubilee Housing has been around forever, and they are very reputable, and everybody loves Jubilee Housing, but we were blessed to be able to partner with them and acquire bed space at their program as well. So if anybody has any questions, they can always reach out to me or my staff.
Great, thank you. Well, now we've run out of time, and I'd like to once again thank the speakers for sharing information about the programs and resources available for returning citizens. For those of you who may want to get in touch with the speakers, their contact information will be posted on the United Way National Capital Area website. Thank you so much.